early ideas about matter. So this goes a long time ago. Leucippus, 5th century BC. And his student Democritus, who lived from 460 to 370 BC. These guys were the first to propose that matter was composed of small, indestructible particles. It's a long time ago. So, and they had no scientific equipment. They're just sitting and thinking about stuff. They're philosophers. But Democritus wrote, nothing exists except atoms and empty space. Everything else is opinion. And in a way, he's right. Matter is made up of atoms, and between the atoms is empty space. So they proposed that there were many different kinds of atoms that existed, that they were different in shape and size, and that they moved randomly through empty space. So very forward-thinking guys, those two were. And then there's Plato and Aristotle. How many of you have heard of Leucippus and Democritus before today? A handful of you. How many have heard of Plato and Aristotle? Yeah, everybody. So Plato and Aristotle are much more famous, right? They didn't believe what Leucippus and Democritus felt about atoms. They believed that matter had no smallest parts, that you could just divide it infinitely, and that there were just 4 different components of matter: fire, air, earth, and water. And now we think this is laughable. That's ridiculous. Yeah, so the guys that were wrong are much more famous than the guys that were actually right. And that happens, sadly, more often than not. So later, much, much later, we developed a more scientific approach as a way to learn about the physical world. And so here we are in 1766 is when John Dalton was born. He lived until 1844. And John Dalton was the first to offer convincing evidence that Leucippus and Democritus from 300 or so BC were actually correct. Now, my husband has been doing these study abroad things on the history of chemistry, and he's actually been to England and held one of John Dalton's lab notebooks and paged through it and read his original notes. I mean, to a chemist, it's like, wow. It's like, getting to try on some famous movie star's T-shirt or something.